please welcome Sujit Agrawal, ACE, Debbie Berman, ACE, Eliza Bonera, ACE, Claudia Costello, ACE, Braden French, ACE, and our moderator, Ant Boys, ACE.
Hello, friends, and welcome to our panel. And what a panel we have for you today. We have, I could say, the NBA All-Star of panels, and I could say the NFL Pro Bowl of panels, but this is an international panel. People from all over the world have come for this. So we can't be using American sports to make that reference. Instead, we're going to say it's the World Cup of panels. It's the Open Golf Championship of panels. It is the Grand Prix Concours, the Dressage International of panels, which is the international dressage competition, if any of you watch that. We have the loveliest group of people here who've come on to show us some clips. So let me introduce you to some of them. First off, we have an editor who can do it all, from reality to documentary, from drama to comedy. His credits include The Real Housewives, Dancing with the Stars, Shark Weeks, Renovations, Satya, Send Help. It is the one, the only Sujit Agrawal, ACE. Way! Hi, Sujit. Next up, we have an editor who, if you like your Marvel, and I'm sure some of you do, I know that I do, we have an editor view. She has credits that include Spider-Man Homecoming, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Love and Monsters. It is the one, the only Debbie Berman, ACE. Woo! Now we have a documentary editor that is just so special. I am so excited that she's here. With credits that include Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me, Still Working 9 to 5, David Crosby, Remember My Name. It is the one, the only Elisa Bonera, ACE. Now we have someone else whose movies I am a big fan of, really big fan of. They include Prey, Creed, and the amazing Fruitville Station. It is the one, the only Claudia Costello, ACE. Ray!
Hello.
And finally, a comedy editor, first and foremost, with an editing style that I adore, with credits include A Black Lady Sketch Show, Ferguson Rises, An American Horror Story. It is Braden French, ACE. Ray!
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Hello. So what you might think is, when you have a lineup like this, when you have so many world-class editors, what you want to do is get them on and talk about their work and talk about their processes and pick their brains. And we're not going to do that, because that is just way too sensible. We don't do that around here. Instead, what we've done is we've asked them to pick a film or a TV show and to show us a little clip from it, a clip that they love, a clip that might be their favorite bit, hence the name of the panel. You see, it all comes together, it all works. This is inspired by and a homage to the great late Norm Hollin and his panel, The Lean Forward Moment, which, if you have a look on YouTube, you can find a couple of versions of. And if you've not read his book, The Lean Forward Moment, you should definitely go read that, because that's fantastic. I would say that the selection of clips that we have today, eclectic would be a word I could use, and phenomenal would be another word. So without further ado, let's have a look at some of these clips. And Sujit, we're going to come to you first. So if you wouldn't mind, could you please give us a little introduction for what it is we're about to see?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. This is really good. Since it's EditFest Global, I chose a clip from 2004 Stephen Chow's movie called Kung Fu Hustle. For those who don't know about this movie, it's a society of people with extraordinary powers who defeat the X-Gang. So this scene is the second scene in the movie where we are introduced to the X-Gang. And here you go.
Amazing, amazing. So Sujit, why did you choose this clip?
So growing up, I was a big fan of Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee movies. I I even took karate lessons, but I failed. So I have a soft spot for like martial art films. What I like about this film is, it's complete action, comedy, fantasy, all in one complete entertainer. It's almost similar to the recent release, Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, um, the scene, this scene in particular has like really great choices of like different different shots, incorporating high speeds and not showing too much blood, which was like it's a family film, like you can watch with anyone you want. I feel like this movie was is a fun to watch, brilliantly edited, and one of my favorite films.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting you say about the blood because it's they tend to use sound. I notice in this movie to highlight those things, whereas in other movies they might use the blood. But in this clip, for example, the sound all drops out as the axe passes through his leg, and really highlights that, does it? It makes it gives the same impression using the sound.
Impression, yeah, and you kind of like you are engraved in the shot, and you want to see what the action is gonna what's gonna be the next thing,
Hmm.
rather than the
Yeah,
sound take that thing for you.
that's yeah. It does such a good job of just keeping the momentum going. It's and the pacing before is it's not too much. It's not too action. It's not too crazy. You're getting to see everything that's happening. But when it does pause, it really impacts you.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, this scene doesn't do justice of this film being comedy, but if you watch the entire film, it's really fun. All the characters, it's brilliantly casted, and they grow on you as the film progresses.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you think that what would you say is your favorite element of the movie when it comes to that? Because obviously the way that they can cut the action and the way that they can cut the drama is brilliant. But do you think it's more the sound design? Do you think it's the way they use point of view in the film? What would you say is your favorite element?
I think I would say a little bit of everything. The movie has a lot of like VFX, which is great, but the way they implemented the VFX is like speeding up and stuff like that, was really cool for me.
Hmm.
Like normally you would see like any VFX heavy movies, you would just see like VFX, right? But this one is like they sped up for comedy timing. They did certain things, like you mentioned with the sound effect. It just cuts off because you wanna stay on the shot and see how it's gonna play out. You know. So overall, it's everything.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a very complete film. It's yeah, sort of underrated. I feel in modern times. It's sort of do a bit of a comeback with the conversations and about it. Yeah. Um, the one thing I really like about it is that it doesn't like we touched on the momentum a moment ago, but it really doesn't hang around. In another movie when you've got the chap on the floor looking up and he says, which is a very funny line, "You forget about the time I treated you to dinner." Another movie might have your lead character pause or hang around and make the decision. He's just straight in. That axe is coming down, and there's no stopping. Like, yeah. Do you find it just the whole movie does that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Yeah, and if you so because you have cut everything, and cut anything at all. If you were coming into a movie like this, how would you approach it? Would you be looking for the comedy first? Would you be worrying about the VFX first? What would you be your first way of approaching a film like this?
For me, definitely, I would look for drama and comedy. If it's a comedy genre, yes, then I
Hmm.
would definitely look for drama and comedy. VFX is a secondary thing for me. Like I could worry about that later. We can once the pacing is right, and then you can do whatever. Like as long as you're able to tell the good story, best version possible. That's my main concern with any
Yeah,
project that I work on.
yeah, good story first, and yeah, cool. Does anyone else have any questions about this clip?
I was gonna ask about the other scenes, the other action scenes, if he sees anything that draws attention to, like in a style, what they use style wise in throughout the movie. If there's something that you like particularly about the action scenes in the movie?
There are a couple of scenes where they speed up the VFX, like to show you like the transition. Like there's a scene. It's a society of people, and the landlord stays on top, and then somebody calls for the landlord, and the landlord just like speeds up and comes down. There are some like straight to camera shots where like actions where somebody gets slapped and you can see the slaps. So all those sorts of like uh, things are really, really, really fun overall, like which is very hard to see in like some films.
包租婆，包租婆，點解霎時間會冇水呢？
More movies should use those. They're really fun and really excellent. So cool.
It's almost like breaking the third wall kind of thing,
That's it. It's like they do a wonderful job of they do such a great job of saying we're going to entertain you, but we're going to let you in on it as well. Trust us. We're coming with you. We're going to show you some cool bits. You know what you're getting. There's some great kung fu, but we're just gonna be like, if you can come along with us, we're just gonna let you in, little jokes just for you. Yeah. I'd love to see more films. More of that.
I remember.
Go on, Braden. You were gonna say.
Yeah, I remember around when it came out, and it's been a minute since I've seen it, but it was such a fun melding of this great action, and it had a humor about it that I think set it apart from a lot of stuff that was out at the time. And I think the parallel that you're drawing with Everything Everywhere All at Once is a great one. And I'm thinking of other films that they're high octane action, but they have this humor element. I'm thinking of like Bullet Train and all these things where you get this blend of genre that they each kind of lend themselves to one another, even if that's not traditionally how they were done. And when was this? This was
2004.
2004. Yeah. I can't remember what came out around there. Maybe Snatch, but
that's my second best film. I was actually trying to grab a clip from it, but
I thought about Snatch too.
I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie and Wes Anderson. I watch all of their movies. I just like the style, the way they tell comedy, the way they frame their shots and everything. I'm a big fan of it.
Very inventive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Snatch. I won't do the accent, even though I'm from London. I'll spare you all that. But cool. Well, I think it might be time to have a look at Debbie's clip. So, Debbie, if it's all right with you, why don't you just give us a little introduction of what it is we're about to see?
Yeah, in fact, talking about choices, originally I was going to go with the famous scene from Seven, like, what's in the box? I shouldn't have tried to do that then. But it's such a remarkable scene that I wanted to just mention it because I want everyone to go and like watch that scene. It's just brilliantly edited and it's really powerful. But, we kind of thought, well, there are many things you can read about the scene. I decided to do a clip from Death Becomes Her, which is one of my favorite films. It's a fun, dark comedy. It's, there's a rivalry between Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn. And after I selected the clip, I remembered that Arthur Schmidt, who edited it, actually passed a month ago. And so I thought that was a little bit serendipitous. So this is, in a way, a bit of a tribute to an incredible editor. And I think the one thing I would love people to focus on while they're watching this clip is perspective. There are three powerhouse actors. Watch how editorially the perspective is changed throughout the clip.
Cool. Let's have a look.
I just want you to know one thing, Hal. You brought this on yourself. Madeline!
Cool. So, Debbie, why did you choose this?
I think I think it's just incredible. You know, I feel like Meryl Streep should have won an Oscar for her performance in that scene alone. But I think because the performances are so incredible, I think there can be a misconception that editorial didn't really play a role, which is incorrect. I mean, arm in arm with every performance is the editor. I mean, I bet there were many takes with many different nuances and innuendos and to find that perfect balance. But as mentioned before, I wanted everyone to sort of look at perspective because I kind of have moved more into a fixer role on films right now. And a lot of the time, more often than not, when a film is not working, it's because it's not in a character's perspective. And understanding how to tell a story through a character is a huge skill. But what's so incredible about this scene is it switches perspectives 3 times. I mean, first it's Meryl's scene. And even when Bruce Willis is talking, he's in the background. We just keep cutting to kind of her coverage. And then when Goldie sort of comes back to life, it becomes her scene. And then right at the end, it becomes his scene. And you know, the comedic timing is genius. You know, there are little things like he screams and then the body flies in that direction. And, you know, it's an absolute masterpiece. But I don't think many people would look at that and think about the editing. But it really is playing a role in supporting, you know, every performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with Arthur especially, he was so good at knowing when not to cut. You know, I think, you know, you see so much nowadays and it's cut for the line and cut for the line, but he could just hold shots forever and just be like, yeah, we're watching 2 great actors. We'll just hold the shot. And so when he does cut, it's so much more impactful, I find. There's a brilliant cut when that close up of Bruce Willis, where just before she blasts him in the stomach, and it's there for, you know, it's maybe 12 or 15 frames, but it's the only time we see that close up of him. And because it's been saved for that moment, it's such a sort of it's so funny that, you know, that beat, like, yeah.
Right, as I said, that emphasizes the trajectory of the body, but then he's just in the background. And the only time you really see him in, you know, closer coverage is when she walks to him and she brings him kind of into the frame. He's just there because she decided, you know what I mean, to stand next to him. And that tells you a lot about the power dynamics as a storyteller. So at the end, when he's walking up the stairs, walking away, and you're just seeing their shadows, like, you know, you can really read into the symbolism, like he's going to a higher place. They're down in the basement, their shadows in his past. Like and I don't think people intellectually analyze these things as they're watching, but I think you feel it in your gut. You feel he's going up, you feel he's leaving them behind. You feel that they're, you know, just these silhouettes, these sort of warped silhouettes. It says a lot, but I'm sure there was a lot more coverage of every of those moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the with him walking up the stairs, it's such a, like, they've chosen such a resigned take. You know, he's processed everything and he's like, you know what, I've had enough of this. They're going to be clearly going at this for hours, so I'm just going to leave them to it. And I do wonder I wonder whether that was always the choice, or whether, knowing Bruce Willis and his range, you know, he probably gave 400 different ways of going up those stairs. So if you were looking at a scene like this, how would you approach it? What would you be looking to? Would you be looking for reasons to cut, or would you be looking for reasons to not cut away, or would you just be looking for reasons to kind of just keep the story going in whatever way works best?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
All of the above. But just to go back, sorry, just to finish that train of thought when talking about the stairs, there is actually quite a big time cut. Like when we cut to him, he's halfway up the stairs, which is also a decision in how you feel, and you don't feel that time, but it's, you know, it's perfectly balanced. But yeah, when you're looking at a scene like this, I guess it would go back to what story are you trying to tell in what moment? So I feel that, you know, a decision was probably made. Like, this is Meryl's story. She's in white. She's, you know, the innocent in this moment. Let's tell the scene through her eyes, you know, and then her look. There's like, I feel this was a bit of a cheat that works great. She kind of looks down, and then we cut to Goldie. It's close up in the pool, and it was kind of like a fake POV that, but also tells us we're going to shift the perspective, and then all of a sudden we're seeing her and Bruce Willis in the same frame, and we haven't seen them share in the frame before. So now, we're kind of starting to tell a different story. Now they're together. Before they were separate, and he was kind of in the background. Now they're together in the plan, and then it becomes Goldie's story. So I'd be like, oh, okay, what is she going through? What is she seeing the two of them together? How does she feel? So you're trying to figure out whose story is the most impactful. It's a balance between these three powerhouses, but in every moment, you're just trying to make things as emotional. And, I think laughing is an emotion. Emotional doesn't mean like what's going to make you cry. Like, how can you have fun and push the characters forward and, push the narrative forward? You're juggling all of these things, but at the same time, essentially, you don't cut it unless you need to.
That's it. It's such an important lesson that don't cut unless you need to. It took me a little while to learn, I need a reason to be cutting. Even if I don't, even if I can't verbalize that reason immediately, even if it's just a cut done on instinct, I need to be able to go back and go, oh, I've done that for this reason,
Yeah, it's not because you're bored of the angle. It's like, well, now I want you to think about what they look like through her point of view. Okay, well, now I want you to, and I think there was even a speed time or a dissolve or visual effects when Bruce Willis ducks and was it spades cross? It's like, that was sped up to make it more impactful, to make it feel like it was a closer call. It's all these, I don't think people realize how much noodling you do as an editor with frames. Like you speed up just a little section and you slow down an eye blink. You just can get in there and have a lot of fun to just make it as impactful as possible.
Yeah. And also having done it so well, Arthur, the only reason that I knew that there would be some sort of speeding up or cheat going on is because there's no way they would have two spades smash in front of Bruce, so close to Bruce Willis's face. They'd never do that. So there has to be a cheat in there somewhere, but I can't see it. So
if you're a good editor, if you're not as accomplished, then you'd be like, oh, well, they hit, and then, we have to keep, and then he ducks. It's like, no, you got to put it as tight as possible. It's up to drama.
Yeah. So does anyone else have a question about the clip?
I don't necessarily have a question. It's just a comment on what Debbie was talking about with POV. It is really interesting how seamlessly they transition the POVs because, in my experience, I think we're often kind of led to say, okay, whose POV is this scene? And you keep it there. And you stay with that person through that scene, even through a set of scenes. And here's an instance where, like she said, you have three powerhouses, three very important characters with very different stories and perspectives. We just so seamlessly go from one to the next. I've seen this movie a million times and I've never noticed it until you pointed out. I guess I've never looked at it with an editor's eye, but how smoothly you're transitioning through these three different people without ever necessarily calling attention to it in a distracting way. It's all there it's there in the edit, it's there in the direction, it's there in the performance, and these three things had to come together really well and cohesively to make that as smooth as it is. So I want to watch the movie again and really watch it for POV because I think that's really interesting how it played out in this scene.
No, I agree. It's a masterpiece. And I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't realize, I chose this clip because it was a fun one. And when I try to sort of analyze it editorially, that's the first thing I noticed. But I feel like, people don't realize the editorial involvement in scenes that are just so funny and so fun. It's really attributed. And of course, performances have to be brilliant for it to be at that level, and the direction and everything else. But it is very specifically crafted. There is a strong editorial hand crafting, the balance of the scene. And you were saying, usually it's like one perspective per scene. I would almost say like one perspective for entire film. Usually you just have your protagonist and you're kind of seeing the whole film through their eyes. So it really, it is a masterclass. And I think people don't, you wouldn't think death becomes her, you'd go to Seven, you'd go to like what's in the box scene, and you watch the brilliant sort of tension unwinding, and it's also a masterpiece. But something like this, which is just pure fun, you know, has that same sort of input. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And I
it's
think
interesting
also,
you guys are talking about. Oh, sorry. I think it's
no, please,
interesting you guys talking about seamless editing. It was one of my, you know, I'm Italian. My legacy, my editing education, it comes from Italy. Bertolucci, Perpignani, Chimarcalli, which would be my clip. And the big conversation was always seamless editing or versus very visible editing as a choice. So when I came to work in the United States and I was in Hollywood, it was all about the seamless, you know, the fact that editing becomes transparent and invisible, and like the mastering of having 3 characters, which is very complex, like you're saying, shifting a scene and being like this invisible force of editing. And then there is this whole other school where editing becomes almost like a character itself. Like you were mentioning Hank Corwin earlier, like Hank, he does this incredible, you know, jump cutting and transforming of time, and when the sequence of editing becomes actually very visible and becomes a character itself, are completely 2 different schools of editing. So when you analyze a scene like that, the beauty is the seamless. And then when you go to other movies like Hank stuff, it's all about the absolute visible editing that you start appreciating, because it's completely like almost like a craft sculpture. You know, it's kind of interesting 2 ways to look at editing, if we're talking editing in general, not specific for this.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But that's the beauty
And
of
just,
it, right? Is there's no like if you want to be an editor, you need to make it seamless, or if you want to be an editor, it has to be flashy. It's like both can be intelligent and excellent, and it's really about what serves the project. And I even think editors within themselves, and I change my editorial style to what serves the project, what serves the story, what serves the sort of director's tone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like you choose the language and you serve a project, which is the hardest thing as an editor, right? Because you have to leave your ego, not your personality, but your subjectivity, but you have to become the film. And that's the beautiful thing, because you almost like becomes a time traveler or a character. You know, you become part of somebody else's world, and you translate that on screen, which is really interesting. For me, I love that I have to go in somebody else's mind and really trying to cut their movies, not my movie, which is very cool. But I now want to see that movie again, because now you very much intrigued me about these 3 characters. I love that.
Yeah, it is.
Like
It holds up well. I got to say, like sometimes when I go back and watch films that I thought were brilliant and edgy when I was younger, and I rewatched them, I'm like, oh, I should not have been recommending that to people. But Death Becomes Her holds up, and the visual effects hold up. I mean, it was early 90s, I think 92. It won an Oscar for best visual effects, and they're still, you know, some of the older films where you can really see. But it holds up brilliantly. It is a masterpiece. And so funny. I mean, Meryl, like, she is just eating that screen. I mean, every single second, she is just, you know, having so much fun.
Yeah.
It's
I
Bruce,
love it,
you know,
'cause
Bruce Norman is the hero action guy, but he's this meager kind of perfect, and he's so sad to see him on screen, knowing that he's not well now.
Yeah, but how beautiful that we can go back. You know, how beautiful that we can go back, and, like, honor like performances that affected us and that, you know, still bring us so much joy. Like, what a gift to be able to go back and revisit that. And his physical comedy in this film is amazing. Like, even just the way he walks with like a little sort of pigeon-toed wobble, you know, he just becomes this meek character. But we've seen him Die Hard, you know, so it really,
like, he's fabulous. He's absolutely amazing. Such a great, all of those guys, fabulous actors. What fun to cut a movie with those actors, getting your hands on those performances. Fun.
So I could talk about this with you guys forever, but we're going to have to move on to the next clip, I'm afraid. So, Elisa, we're going to come to you. Could you tell us what it is that we are about to watch, please?
We're about to see The Conformist by Bertolucci, and was cut by Kim Arcalli, who it's an old clip from the 70s, but was the beginning of nonlinear editing. And this, for me, was always very inspiring since film school, this movie. Because, Kim received the script. It was a linear structure, and then realized the movie wasn't working that way. So he asked Bertolucci to leave him for months. Bertolucci trusted him and allowed Kim to take this entire, completely change the structure and create a nonlinear. And start a whole wave of nonlinear editing in narrative films. Cavani also used a lot of nonlinear with Kim. Kim cut a lot of amazing movies, and he's been my inspiring mentor, even though by the time I was editing, he already passed, but has been for a long time, always been my inspiration, even though I'm a documentary editor. But I'm always confronted with structure, and when I do my documentaries, and his way of editing has been very, very inspiring to me. The way he always finds structures that are very dynamic, and so that's why I picked this film.
Cool. Let's have a look at the clip. Cool. So you mentioned in your intro about the non-linear nature of it. How do you think when you're approaching something like that, because the film does such a good job of keeping tension up. It's all about secrets and lies and who knows what and who doesn't know what. Do you think that they go in and do it piece by piece? Do you think they take it over as an overall structure? How do you think that they would approach that?
Can I read you something very interesting I thought about how Kim approached it, right? So Kim was he was a freedom fighter, was a partisan before he was an editor. He fought in the mountains and he was very brave. And so the question is, why Kim Arcalli, he was such a heroic and actionful kind of man, decided to lock himself in a dark room by himself to cut movies? That's like, what the hell happened to this man? Maybe because he recognized the power of editing and he was interested in the body of the film, of filmmaking and reality itself. He was not an embroiderer. He was sewing words, sentences, and building story plots. He was basically a storyteller. He was, and apparently they work with him in a system. He was editing, pacing his foot like he was doing some conducting or composing music. So how did he approach this? I don't know. I was not in his editing room, but I suppose he strung together this film and realized it was not working the way it was. And so he created tension, like you're saying, by juxtaposing scenes in a way they became almost like a Russian doll's box, where you finally find the plot unfolds backward and forward. It's a constant readjusting and taking the material and then recut it. Bertolucci said he discovered editing actually with Kim and this movie particularly. He said until then he was trying to avoid editing. He thought editing was sort of a repressive art for an artist. But when he cut this movie with Kim, discovered this way of sort of finding a way to edit that was very similar to shooting, where you open the door to improvisations, to discovery, and the material is there to be completely molded. So it's a form of discovery. It's sometimes extremely painful, you guys know. Because when you go into something without a script, even though it's a feature, so you have to, it's a constant discovery, and some moments are extremely painful because you lost. You think you lost. There's always that moment, I call it a quagmire moment, when you have this big blob of things and you, oh my God, where is the beginning, where's the end? And then slowly you find the structure. And I suppose that Kim must have done something like this. But I know for him, music was very important too. He was very much, the way he was editing was musical, and he would bring in sounds as long and words and images together. It's very different process than, for instance, like Death Becomes Me, right? Those are two completely different approaches of editing that I thought it's interesting to bring this. And, this is the 70s, obviously. So language has developed so much since then. If you look at Hitchcock, some shots are maybe shot 3 setups, and then as you go any further. So this is the 70s, but still I think his approach is very modern on the way he was editing.
Yeah, there's, that the letter's brilliant, and the fact that he discovered editing on this film that's amazing. I never knew that. That's a brilliant fact. What you said at the sound is lovely. His love of music. There's the bit in this when sort of the music comes in, like she's put a record on, like that. It's it's an up tempo. It's a sort of like party piece. She's giving the illusion that something's fun, but the way the cuts around it are, that this is not an enjoyable. There's something else going on. Like the way that he has structured the shots around this piece of music do not make you feel happy in any way. It just gives this impression of like you feel very uncomfortable watching this.
Yeah. The scene when they fall on the ground and they roll on the carpet, you would think there would be music there, right? There would be more, but there is none. It's dry, and it has a sense of, because that relationship is dry. That relationship is not real. That relationship is based on nothing. And this man is nothing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story, but basically this is fascist times. He gets hired to go and kill his professor in Paris, who's a freedom fighter, Italian freedom fighter, and a professor in France, but he's actually Italian. So he's chosen to go and go with his fiancée to kill him. So it's obvious this man is, empty relationship. So it's kind of interesting how it's treated as a character, and Sandrelli does such a beautiful, but also, the costume, the Storaro's photography is brilliant. That's a movie where I think very beginning where you start seeing Dutch angles with lines, vertical lines, or the whole, it was not just editing, it's also the photography together work really, really well. He was, blessed to have that beautiful footage.
Yeah, the shot of him in the lobby with on stairs is just amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
I had a question. So you were saying how you love editing nonlinear and you're inspired by this, and I love nonlinear storytelling also. But I was wondering, do you enjoy it because it's sort of intellectually more challenging and more interesting to watch? Or do you choose to make things nonlinear because it makes things more emotional, the order in which things are revealed, like something maybe becomes more of a revelation? And if you have to choose between intellectually more interesting or maybe linear and more emotional, which way do you veer?
I think emotional. I always choose the emotional. It's interesting. But for instance, right now I'm editing a documentary on Kenneth Cole. I don't know if you guys know, he's very involved with the social and political since the very beginning of his years. This is the one documentary that I have to be much more linear than usual because his progression and his discovery of his own social understanding his place in the world is actually more interesting linear. Emotionally, it's more impactful. Maybe there is a little bit of a childhood that needs to kind of go somewhere that is not, but no, I choose the emotional. Normally, in non-linear structure in documentaries enables you to really lock in certain emotional thing by juxtaposing, just like Kim did this in this movie. Becomes much more interesting and explosive in certain ways when you juxtapose. It gives you freedom as an editor to really mold the story, but cannot be just for the sake of non-linear.
Yeah, so you're giving the information at just the right time to make it feel the most
Hopefully.
emotionally packed when
Hopefully.
you're holding one hand, so it rips your heart out the
Yeah.
most. No, I love that because I feel the same. Like, I love intellectually challenging things, but I for me as a filmmaker, emotion has to rule. But I also think there are no wrong answers. I think you draw the audience to the kind of film, that you make that they like also. But that's cool.
Cool. Wow. Claudia, I think it's time to have a look at your clip, if that's okay with you. Would you give us a little intro as to what it is that we're about to see next?
Okay. City of God is one of my main inspirations for editing. It was edited by Brazilian Daniel Rezende. And I think the style of this movie is very particular. It's also a non-linear movie throughout. And this opening scene, I think, portrays how the movie is going to play. It's very fast-pacing, and it foreshadows how the movie is going to play. It's a very violent movie, and they open with a chicken being chased, and it's full of close-ups and fast whips, and it's handheld camera, which gives you a sensation that is a very real situation, and it's just a taste of how the movie is gonna be. So we can watch it and have a feel for it.
Awesome. Let's have a look at the clip.
Beautiful. Wow. What a beautiful sequence.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's such a good sequence.
Ali. Jesus.
Yeah. So Claudia, you were saying in the beginning how it does a hint towards the violence that's coming in the film. But also, to go back to what we were saying about earlier about perspective, it is all from the perspective of the chicken, the first part of it at least. You get the sense that the chicken knows something's coming and it's scared.
Yes, I think it's a metaphor for the lives of the characters in this place. And this movie, it shows many different perspectives. It's a very complex film because it involves so many elements in 2 hours, and you're able to follow everyone's story, and you understand what is going on, and it jumps back in time, fast forward. So it's such a rich movie in terms of using all the tools you can use as a film editor, as a director, of course. And also, I think this is a movie highly made by an editor. I think this is one of the situations where editing plays the front role. Daniel built in a style in this movie, which is documentary, handheld, fast paced, and a lot of times he uses fast forwarding, freeze frames, and caps to introduce each of the characters. And the way it's stitched together is always a challenge. I watched this movie about 10 times or more, and every time I watch, it's like, this is brilliant, this is amazing. It's always refreshing for me, even though it's a movie that was made in 2002 or 3, if I'm not wrong. It still holds up as a big reference for any editor or anybody who's starting and wants to be inspired.
Yeah, I saw it I don't know, 7 or 8 times when it first came out. I was quite obsessed with it, and every time I watched it, I was like, "Oh, there's something new. Oh, there's something new." And I think I could watch it another 20 times and not catch everything. You know, it's just non-stop. It just keeps going and going, and yeah, like you said, every trick in the book is used by the editor in this. You know, I think the sound as well. We've talked about it before, but the sound is amazing in this.
Sound is very interesting. It uses a lot of sounds from the environment. That's also a big thing in this movie. And also one interesting thing, there's no score. It's all music, all Brazilian music. So I love how Fernando Meirelles, the director, made this choice of being real, authentic to the environment, you know, and using this classic Brazilian music and also popular music that people use every day. And I think it plays really well. We don't need a score. We don't need something crafted specifically for this movie. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think he does a thing where it's almost like the sound the sound of the neighborhoods are used as score themselves, like you were just saying. It's using those, and busier when you're supposed to feel tense, and lighter when it's funnier. It feels very crafted, the sound that they're using in the background.
Everything's a choice, it feels like. And in terms of even image, sometimes it feels like the scene wasn't shot to be what it is, because they use shots there of out of focus, and some like shots from the back, some shots that you can identify very well with what it is. That as an editor, every shot has to have a meaning, right? But in the mix, somehow it feels like it bridges things together, and in the end, it makes sense. Even though, like, if you analyze one shot at a time, it feels like, why did you put it there? Because it bridges it well, and maybe he didn't have anything else. So I think that shows the craft of an editor. Even though if you don't have what you need, you make it work somehow. Like you're always solving problems. So
yeah, there's a shot where the kids are sort of running towards camera, and when the shot comes, in the clip, when the shot came on, I was like, well, this is an interesting shot. It's all out of focus. I don't know which of these kids I'm supposed to be looking at, and the camera's sort of split shaky, and you just get the flash of the guns coming through. I'm like, that's why the shot's there. I'm not supposed to be looking at anything else. I'm just supposed to be going, oh, this is chaos. Oh, there's guns. And then they start shooting at the chicken. And it's almost like it does two things, that shot, where it's like it shows you, hey, there's kids with guns, and that's a thing. You know, get used to it because you're going to see a lot of this. But also, it's a setup to a joke. You know, so to do two things with a shot that's so messy it's just genius, I think.
Right. That even though you have that violent environment, there is some irony, some lighter moments, even within that crazy, violent world. Yeah, you have to have those in a movie, otherwise it's unbearable, right, to watch.
Yeah.
This is a typical example of what we were saying before, like non-linear editing that serves a emotional purpose. It's not there just for intellectual reason. You know, it really is. I couldn't imagine a better way to express that whole story than edited that way. It's like if it would, that's a case where if that would be linear, it wouldn't be boring, right? So it's like the emotion comes out from juxtaposition, and the non-linear, the chicken looking down, the chicken being killed, the blood, this, all that. It really makes you emotionally, so engaged. It's the opposite of death becomes a me. Those really are world editing. One is the seamless and
becoming her. No, it is amazing. It's so iconic because I saw it when it first came out, say 20 years ago. I think I saw it twice, and I absolutely adored it, and instantly it was like top 3 films ever. And then I haven't seen it since. And then as soon as you said the opening scene, I was like, oh, the chicken scene. And I'm like, how the hell did I remember that the opening of the film I saw 20 years ago was the chicken scene? Like that must have really sort of, it's so masterfully done. And yeah, it is interesting. What I do seem to recall is the film has a lot of powerful transitions between the scenes, right? And I feel like, back to what I was saying earlier is like what people think editors do and don't. And I could be completely wrong, but like I think people are like, oh, it's good editing because look at those great transitions, which I feel were probably more in the director's hand. They're very specific, planned visual transitions. But the brilliance of the editing is in how you feel, how you care, the dynamic, the action of the scene. And it's just a funny thing. I know I always get fascinated by like what people give editors credit for and what you don't get credit for. I mean, everyone was mad with me on Spider-Man for 8 years later. I'm like, I had nothing to do with 8 years later. The time the novel nerds had like a 10-page quotient how it wasn't actually 8 years later, and they were blaming the editors. And it's a brilliant choice. Yeah, I love that. I want to watch it.
Yeah, my theory is that no one knows what editors do apart from editors, some directors, and then one or two producers. And no one else.
It's so amazing to have this opportunity to be here with all you guys. It's like so rare opportunity. So I'm very glad to hear.
I feel like Claudia and I are long distance cousins who've never met because we're part of the same Cougar.
Hey.
You go to Thanksgiving dinner, and this is
Yeah. Well, this is why I love doing this, because we spend our lives in dark rooms away from everyone else. So, it's I get to say to ACE, hey, let me do this, and then you can show all these editors talking to the world. But really, it's very selfish. I just want to talk to you guys and hear what you guys have to say. It's all for me. Forget everyone else.
Thank you for being selfish that way.
Also, directors don't want people to know what an editor does. That's a whole other level of secrecy, right? I can never forget my dear friend Pietro Scalia, who cut Gladiator, right? It starts with the hand on the hay, and it's all again non-linear. That was Pietro. Pietro found an old piece of footage at bottom of the bin of I think was Grip that was doing a camera test, and there was the hand of the Grip, and then we shot the actor.
Wow!
But that was Pietro.
Wow.
But really, it would never say. So,
every compliment towards the editor is showing us. If you say, the performance was terrible, but the editor fixed it, then you're insulting the actor. The script was nonsensical, but the editor fixed it. You told the script writer, the directing didn't get the coverage. So it's like every compliment to the editor points out,
It's sensitive. Yeah, you're right. Or this movie, this scene was rewritten, or we cut a lot of the dialogue.
Dialogue.
It's going back to what you were saying earlier. It's seamless editing, but not just with shots. It's like, hey, it was always designed to be like that, when actually you've taken 7 things from 7 different scenes.
Shots. There were 5 shots. I mean, plan to be like that, but seamlessly stitched together, right?
This is
at a certain point I want to do a documentary on editors, and then go in follow 2-3 different projects in the editing room to see all the evolution. Impossible legally. Nobody ever lets you know what really goes down, what happens in the dark.
Shouldn't stay in the dark.
To be fair, I sort of forget. I get towards the end of a show and I'm like, I can't remember what I did. I can't remember how it looked in the first assembly. And then I go back and I'm like, oh, really? Did I do that? Okay, great. Yeah. So, Braden, I think it might be time for your clip. Would you tell us what we're about to watch, please?
Okay, so I was really racking my brain about what clip to pick. And there were some narrative pieces that were really instrumental in inspiring me to get into filmmaking. Chief among them was The Shining. And so I was really thinking about doing that. But I started thinking about documentary. At the beginning of my career, I got really into documentary. And I think that what documentary did for me, I'll say first, what The Shining did for me and some other movies, Full Metal Jacket, actually Candyman, these movies that linger in your brain, and you take them home with you after you watch them. That was always a distinguishing feature about films that was really interesting to me when I was younger. And then when I started watching documentary, I realized you could go a step further and create conversation out of real things that happen in the world, or real people that you might never meet in real life, or any combination of things that people make documentary films about, but they generate additional thought and conversation long beyond what you're just watching in the screen in that moment, and sometimes can have effects on people long after you made it, long after they watched it. It can even have generational effects. And so some of the documentaries from when I was younger, I think Hoop Dreams had a huge impact on me. American Movie, and the clip that I'm pulling from is Bowling for Columbine, which is 2002, Michael Moore. And if you're not familiar with the film, it's a documentary about the events leading up to and after the shooting at Columbine High School that happened in 1999. And this is also framed by, this movie is 2002. It's also a bit framed by the events of 9/11, which would happen 2 years later, and a year before this film was released. So here's a little clip from it.
Let's have a look.
In George Bush's America, the poor were not a priority. And after September 11th, 2001, correcting America's social problems took a back seat to fear, panic, and a new set of priorities.
Wowzers.
So
Yeah.
hard to watch. Jesus.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time I saw anything so scary, look so cool as well. Like,
yeah.
So tell us why you picked this clip.
Yeah. So, the same as I had a tough time figuring out what movie I wanted to use, it was very difficult to pick a clip from this particular film, not just because of the time constraint, but also this film has a lot of sequences, really deep, impactful sequences, but they're very violent, and it's real. It's real bodies, it's real violent situations, and I thought for Edit Fest, let me not get too crazy, but this particular sequence, I think, leads to one of the moments in the film that struck me. And I rewatched this movie for the first time in quite a few years a couple nights ago, and I found it to still shock me. I cried at several parts. It still had the emotional heft, and it also has I don't know. There's a sad fact to it that one of the parts this film covers is there's a shooting at an elementary school, which at the time was the youngest school shooting ever. And part of the message of the movie is we're not done doing this. And all these years later, that was 2002. We're 2023, 21 years later. We're still here. But the moment in this film from this clip, if you've seen it, famously, it goes on to, they go to the Kmart corporate headquarters and ask to speak to somebody about them discontinuing the selling of ammunition, as these kids, they were shot with, I believe they say, 17-cent rounds from Kmart that were just down the street from Columbine High School. And so he takes these two students to the Kmart corporate headquarters, and they basically harass the staff all day, who, they come down every couple hours. They'll get some face who'll say, yeah, we'll get somebody else to address it. And then they go away, and they end up waiting there all day with basically no progress. So, in the following scene, sorry, I'm describing all kinds of scenes to you, but it's why it's important to me, is they end up going to Kmart, the Kmart that's near their headquarters, and buying up all of their ammunition and bringing it back to the corporate headquarters the next day. But they also bring a media team with them, like they bring all the local press and say, these are survivors from Columbine. We're trying to return bullets and get them to commit to not doing ammunition sales. As soon as they show up, they send a vice president down to announce live on the documentary and live in front of all these reporters, Kmart is going to discontinue the sale of ammunition. And I even remember that from the documentary, and seeing it all these years later, I gasped when it happened. I was like, oh my God, this documentary and Michael Moore and these boys putting this kind of pressure on this corporation led to actual results. And I believe Kmart followed through and discontinued the sale of ammunition following the events that just started to unfold in this clip. But, in terms of the clip itself, I think too, there's so many great montages that this film does. There's some famous ones. There's a montage of the overthrow of all these governments and dictators and reinstallation of new ones and it's very violent, and it's set to Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. There's another one that I would have liked to include, but I didn't for particular reasons. There's a sequence where you get to the high school the day of the events, and they just roll the 911 tapes as they get progressively more serious. And it starts with B-roll of the school and eventually turns into surveillance footage of what's happening inside. Very disturbing. It's very emotional. It's very powerful. I don't think at the time this was shown in theaters, I don't think people had heard a lot of those 911 calls or saw a lot of that surveillance footage. I remember for me, when I was in the theater, it was haunting. And it was one of the things that I brought back home with me. And I think that was true of a lot of people who saw the movie. And I remember leaving the theater, I was haunted by the things that happened in the film, but I was also instilled with this sense that this is a very powerful medium to generate these conversations and to call attention to things in a way that the news cycle, I don't think, can. And, you can really get in deep and investigate and make people engage in a way that I think is really unique to documentary filmmaking and filmmaking in general. But that's the long reason why I chose the clip.
That's an excellent reason. I like that. Yeah. So the film does, and the clip as well, we just saw it there, an amazing job of shifting between being fun and entertaining while telling several scary stories, but also giving respect to these kids and the subjects, in the way that it can just change on a dime the style. It's quite something to watch, the way it does it.
Yeah, the whole film does that. I mean, there's another part that I won't get in specific parts, but there's a lot of humor in the movie, and it goes a long way towards making. I think I've found too in my own career doing documentary that sometimes well-placed humor goes a really long way in helping people to digest tough information and to have hard conversations. And I think that's just the way films go too, is you don't want a straight line across anything. You want to go on an emotional journey, and emotion isn't just sadness or despair. Emotion is it's laughing, it's happiness, there's jokes. The beginning of the film is him going into a bank, and the bank says, if you open up a savings account, we give you a free gun. So it just follows him into the bank to get his free gun after opening his account. It's ridiculous, but it's hilarious, and it's like what the hell at the same time. And I think this,
I always feel
his
like
films in
sorry.
general, but I think this one in particular does such an excellent job at navigating humor and heartache and seriousness.
And when we deal
That's
with
why I
something
always
so
feel-
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's a rapid comment. I was gonna say when things are so absurd, it's an opportunity to put some comedy in there. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking in a lighter way, it's heavy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
I
it's
always
a
feel
movie
like-
about the absurdity. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say I've always felt comedy loosens the faucet for crying. It's like it's easier to laugh than to cry, but if you can have people laughing, then it enables the cry to come in. It's very, because the emotional faucet is open. So yeah, in any film when you want to emotionally impact, that's the way to sneak in. Look, I've got you engaged. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Once you laugh, your heart is open, and then unfortunately, the most emotional, you open to emotion, and that's when you,
Yeah. That again, some of the funniest parts of the movie are followed immediately by some of the most tragic things, and I mean that was truly the journey I had rewatching it. And I'm not being a tough guy. I'm just not much of a movie crier. But in part maybe because it's real, but also the emotional journey I went on watching the film. It took me back to why I wanted to do this, and be a part of something that could make people feel and think this way.
Mm-hmm. So the classic drama face is the two faces, the laughing and the crying. They're both together. And to say with you, it's the same for me. It's the ability to create these moments, make your audience laugh, and then they go, "Aha! I've snuck something up on you. Here we go. We're going to make you cry now." Yeah, it's really quite
manipulating the audience for a cause.
Yeah, that's it. Manipulating nonstop. That's what we do. That might be a wonderful moment to pause on this conversation. Thank you, everyone, for coming on and for being brilliant and for being amazing and showing such wonderful clips. I could talk to you forever and ever, and so I will. So the next time I'm in all of your neighborhoods, I'm taking you out for beers so we can keep chatting about all this stuff, because I've got 15,000 more questions. To everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. Stick around, because I believe coming up very soon, we have Hank Corwin giving a masterclass. How good's that going to be? And then there's some breakout rooms. And if you're very lucky, you might catch one of these lovely people in them as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to throw you back over to the lovely ACE people. And we'll see you next time. Thank you kindly. Cheers. Bye-bye.